Welcome back to the course on Health Humanities, Indian and Western Medical Knowledge Traditions. This is lecture number 29th on mental illness in Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. In this lecture, I will discuss about how a woman is having mental illness and what are the symptoms of her mental illness, how she copes with her mental illness, what are the moments through which her mental illness has been provoked further, how she looks at herself, what are the ways through which she can manage her mental illness, and what are the options when a person is having mental illness or then how they can survive. It further talks about how the people with mental illness can define themselves, what they think about themselves, what they think about their family members, what they think about doctors, what they think about other people. Further, in this lecture, I will talk about how the gender roles, how the societal expectations, how different institutions have different roles in not just in increasing but also helping in the mental health of a person. So to begin with, this novel, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, is a semi-autobiographical novel. It deals with some of the personal experiences of the author, of Sylvia Plath. So, and Sylvia Plath too has a mental depression, mental breakdown, and she commits suicide after the publication of this novel. So this novel is particularly concerned about its protagonist, Esther Greenwood, and it chronicles her mental breakdown. And the mental breakdown of Greenwood has been caused by so many factors. It can be the personal, it can be familial, it can be social, it can be cultural, it can be economic, it can be medical. And when we think about the character, the girl, Esther Greenwood, she is a 19-year-old undergraduate student from suburbs of Boston, and she gets a summer internship at a fictional ladies' day magazine. She got the internship to act as a guest editor in the New York City. She goes to the New York City, the city of love, the city of joy, but she finds no hope. She finds that her life has been reduced to the dust, and she finds no meaning in her life. She is not able to connect with the people over there. She thinks that the people who are around, maybe her colleagues, her friends, and other people, and they are not having any kind of concerns about her. He finds the people like who are having joy, who are having happiness in New York, but her life has become very different, very excluded, secluded, and painful. After a point of time, she comes back to her home in Massachusetts, and she is expecting, she is hoping for another opportunity, another project, and considering that it will actually help her. And then she attempts, when she's expecting another project, and this project is about writing a novel. She attempts to write a novel, but she lacks experiences. And then she finds that she thinks that scriptography can be a form of maintaining one's mental health, but this is not working with her. Well, when you compare this novel, The Bell Jar, with a recent novel by Ian McEwan, where he talks about scriptography in atonement, it does help. So we have to identify that we need to look at the mental illness cases from the individual perspective. We cannot have a wholesome, universal methods for all the people who are having mental illnesses, and then they can apply the same methods to heal themselves. A method can work for oneself but may not work for other people, and hence she drops the idea of writing novels because she finds she cannot complete it. She is not having enough resources, enough storage, enough characters through which she can complete her novel. Further in this novel, Esther Greenwood attempts multiple suicides. She attempts drowning. She actually swims deeper in the sea, assuming she will get drowned and die. She attempts poisoning herself. She eats pills, thinking that she will die. And she also consults some doctors and some therapists. And one of them is Dr. Nolan, whom she has a lot of faith in, and she does get a lot of relief. And in this way, this novel is a reflection about death, violence, and the role of women in the society. It is about the reflections of the people who are mentally sick and how they think about self-violence, hurting themselves, how they think about their own death, or the role of other women around them, how they can help them or how they can help her in healing. So this novel explores the theme of depression, identity crisis, as well as societal pressure, the societal pressure of marriage, the societal pressure of living in a family, having children, etc. Further, the narrative of the novel reflects over Sylvia Plath's own struggle with mental illness, her clinical depression and bipolar second disorder. So we have the biographical elements intermingling with the character Esther Greenwood, and revealing like how Greenwood is suffering and what are the ways through which Greenwood suffers, and how her life has become something very, very unbearable. The mental health background about Sylvia Plath, the author, though I talked about that she herself was having mental depression, she was battling with depression throughout her life. She was hospitalized and underwent electroconvulsive therapy, ECT. And when we think about Esther Greenwood, she also has gone to ECT, but her ECT failed. And the way we have the author Sylvia Plath committing suicide, in a similar way, the protagonist Esther Greenwood also attempts multiple suicides. So in a way we can say that this novel is a fictionalized memoir, fictionalized autobiography of the author herself. And one thing, when we think about mental illness, and then the role of metaphor becomes very significant. Think about Susan Sontag, who wrote the book Illness and Its Metaphors, that people actually use metaphor to define illness, or they use illness in the form of metaphors. What is this bell jar? The title of the novel. The bell jar is depicting that how the protagonist Esther Greenwood is trapped in a bell jar. It is revealing that how her life has been trapped in the society, in a world, and this world is like a bell jar where she has no escape. So the bell jar is a symbol of Esther, a mental illness. It is a symbol of her isolation. She says, "I couldn't hear a thing, just the mixed drum of my heart." So the bell jar is revealing the enclosure of stippling enclosure of her depression. It represents, the bell jar represents her detachment from reality and her emotional numbness. So the bell jar is depicting that the kind of situation in which the protagonist Esther Greenwood is surviving. She is being trapped in. And the symptoms of mental illness which she is having. So Esther is having the symptoms of insomnia, exhaustion, suicidal ideation. She has emotional detachment. She has inability to write and complete her novel. She is not able to concentrate on anything, including her writing and other activities. So there are like multiple aspects through which she is depicting her mental illness, and she tries to glorify suicides. She is finding that the people who are suicidal, the people who are having mental illness, are the one with whom she can be close with, and she does become close with the people who are having mental illness. She does like the stories of mental illness, the narratives of mental illness, and she makes her world different from the world of other people, because the world of the so-called normal people is a world in which she has no space. She has no place to reside in. And in this way, we find that she is suffering from a major depressive disorder. She is having societal pressure to perform the conventional traditional female roles, but at the same time, she has a personal ambition. She is having pressure to get married, and at the same time, she wants to maintain her personal autonomy. And this has led to her mental breakdown, which have been partly and partially triggered by her gendered expectations. She says, the trouble was, I hated the idea of serving men. She is not someone who can fit herself in the conventional roles. Esther's mental collapse also results from the choices she makes, the decisions she takes, the society she is living in, and the roles she performs. And her descent into illness has led to her failed suicide attempts, and further the failed suicide attempts also reveals the despair and hopelessness which she is having in her life. She finds herself and her image to be broken down, and she withdraws from all engagements with the society. She is internally disconnected. She is hollow from inside. She is empty from inside. And even if she is living in a seemingly glamorous city of New York, she is living in a glamorous world, but from inside, she has become empty, hollow, disconnected. And in this way, we find that there is a sharp contrast between what she is undergoing from inside and the outer world. So there is no connection between the outer world and the inner world. So from outside, she wants to live like other people, but from inside, her self is turmoil. She does try treatment and healing and recovery. Esther Greenwood undergoes psychiatric treatment, including ECT, but ECT fails. And she also has in between gradual improvement, and she has some uncertain recovery, but she does actually heal. She does have some kind of improvement, and And how does like she approves, like how does she spends her time? What are the like modes through which she can spend her time, where she can associate herself? So she finds that she can have a space, she can have time with the communities of ill people. So she is making space for the communities of the ill, and she is also making space for herself in the communities of ill people. She is having association, she associates herself with the ill people, with the mentally ill people. And she says that being well and being together. He says that being together is more important than being well. She finds some kind of consolation, some kind of attachment. She can share certain thoughts with other people. So being together is more important than being well. There is a spelling error. It's a well, not a will. Further, she talks about her psychic and emotional pain. And when like she is suffering from her emotional pains, whom she can associate with. She mentions that one of the characters, Valerie, who is a lobotomized patient, she has met this person once, and she talks about Miss Norris, her mute neighbor in the asylum. So she can't speak anything, but she likes this person. She finds some space, some place with them, and then like she reads newspapers, and wherever there are instances of suicidal description, or wherever there are stories of the people who have committed suicides, and these are the stories, these are the characters with whom she can associate with. So the people like who are having mental illness, they find that they can live better, or they can live together with the people who are having mental illness. So they try to form their own community. So being well is not their concern, but living together is their concern. In this way, the narrative of Esther is talking about the two kingdoms, the kingdom of well and the kingdom of sick. And she finds that she can belong to the kingdom of sick, not the kingdom of well. The kingdom where everyone is fine. And further, she talks about her own mental illness. She tries to define it, and her definition of mental illness is stereotypical. Her definition of mental illness is negative, and she calls her space the bell jar. I mean, her world is like a bell jar, a place in which she is trapped. She defines that psychic pain was and remains a litmus test for madness. She calls herself, I am neurotic. I could never settle down in either the country or the city. So she calls the people with mental illness as neurotic. She calls the people with mental illness having psychic pain, or calls them mad. So her description goes with the conventional idea of mental illness, but at the same time, she is trying to form a community where she finds a space, a place, where she finds some kind of connections. And she goes to watch a play with other people who are mentally ill, and then she says after watching the play, the only reason I remember this play was because it had a mad person in it, and everything I had ever read about mad people stuck in my mind, while everything else flew out. Here she talks about that when she watched the play, and the play has a mad person, a mad character, and then she remembered it because she has some kind of identification, association with that character. and everything else which was about good people, good character, healthy people, healthy characters, she forgot. So it is revealing that how the people with madness, they form their own community, they form their own spaces. So it has been noticed so far that the people who are mad, they do not form their own community. They are the people who have no social circle. And this narrative is challenging, inverting the idea that they lack societal circles. Rather, they have their own societal circles. And this is not the circle which is called this is not the circle of so-called normal people. In other words, she challenges the world of normalcy and the world of the so-called normal people, and says that she can have her own world. Let us have an extract from the novel Bilja. Let me read this extract. She talks about like her therapy, her medical her medication, and like what she has read, what she remembers, the way she has got her therapy and medical treatments. I have bought a few paperbacks on abnormal psychology at the drugstore and compared my symptoms with the symptoms in the book. With the symptoms in the books, my symptoms tallied with the most hopeless cases. So like she brought some paperback books and then she was comparing her symptoms with the symptoms of the characters. And then those symptoms were getting tallied with the cases of the characters. The only thing I could read beside the scandal sheet were these abnormal psychology books. I was as if some slim opening had been left, so I could learn all I needed to know about my case to end in the proper way. So like she is reading, she is having interest in reading all the people who are having some kind of mental illness, mental disturbances. So she is reading the books of abnormal psychology, comparing herself and saying like how she can find her own case. Further she says, I wonder after the hanging fiasco, if I should just give it up and turn myself over to the doctors. But then I remember Dr. Gordon and his private shock machine. When I was locked up, they could use that on me all the time. Then she says that like when she was getting medication through Dr. Gordon, and then she was given machine shocks, and she was being locked. She's talking about the cure, the treatment of mental illness, that how horrific it is, how fearful it is. And I thought of how my mother and brother and friends would visit me day after day, hoping I would be better. Their visits would slacken off and they would give up hope. They would grow old, they would forget me. They would be poor too. Talking about the intimacy which she can maintain with other people, that her mother, her brothers, her friends will visit, but slowly they will stop visiting her. They may lose their money, they will become poor, they may forget her. So she's having this anxiety of being alone, anxiety of being isolated, the anxiety of being forgotten. They would want me to have the best of care at first, so they would sink all their money in a private hospital like Dr. Gordon's. Finally, when the money was used up, I would be moved to a state hospital with hundreds of people like me in a big cage in the basement. The more hopeless you were, the further away they hide you. Saying that once they become moneyless, then from private hospital, family member, friends can take her to a government hospital, a state hospital, and she will be then caged, like she will be caged in the basement. This is the idea of being trapped, that the people who are mentally sick, they are trapped, they are caged in the basement, they are surviving, they are living in the bell jar. What are the options when the people are having ill? What can think about themselves? What is Esther thinking about her life options? How she can survive, what she can do? And there are certain life options which she is thinking about. One of them is that she can share her pain with her fellow patients. And she shares about her experience. For the first time it occurred to me, John and I might have something in common, because both of them have same kind of mental illness, and she is trying to build her own community. What are other options? It is suicide and death, which she has tried multiple times. And then she says, you will never get anywhere like that. She goes to the grave of her father and then says, like, what she thinks about the death of her father. After kneeling at the grave of her father, she says, I had never cried for my father's death. My mother hadn't cried either. She had just smiled and said, what a merciful thing it was for him he had died. Because if he had lived, he would have been crippled and an invalid for life, and couldn't have stood that. He would rather have died than had that happened. So she says that, like, when her father died, neither she nor her mother cried, because he died while he was able to walk and he was able to do his daily activities. Because once he gets crippled, his life will become invalid, trying to reveal that death is the better option than suffering in the life. So her options in illness, her options in when a person becomes aged, old, are either committing suicide or natural death. What are other options which she can think about? The other options are escape. Where she can escape? Where does Esther want to escape? What can she think about her life when she is getting little cured, little better? And then she says, lately I had considered going into the Catholic Church myself. I knew that Catholics thought killing yourself was an awful sin, but perhaps it was, so they might have a good way to persuade me out of it. So she wanted to become a nun. She wanted to go in a monastery. She wanted to go in the Catholic Church and become a nun. She wanted to become a nun because she was committing the crime of suicide, and this suicide is an awful sin. So she can become a nun, and she can then get rid of this crime. So this is another option which she is thinking about. But the trouble was, church, even the Catholic Church, didn't take up the whole of your life. No matter how much you knelt and prayed, and you still had to eat 3 meals a day and have a job or live in the world. She says that even if you become like a nun in the church, but no matter how much you pray, how much you kneel before the God, you have to have 3 times a meal. You need to do something to survive in this world. And then she says that since she has committed suicide, she is a kind of crazy person. She is someone who is having mental illness, and then Catholics wouldn't take in any crazy nuns. So she says that Catholic Church will not accept her because they will say that she is a crazy nun. Moreover, then she thinks about other options. What are other ways through which she can maintain her life? Where can she escape? Then she thinks about prison, Deer Island prison. But then she says also that this is a nil land. There is no space for herself. And finally, then she decides that she will be going to the mental institutions. She talks about her experiences at the clinic of Dr. Gordon, and she says, I remember Dr. Gordon and his private shock machine. Once I was locked up, they could use that on me all the time, that they can lock her and then provide her shock through machines. So there are different ways through which she is coping. She wants to live with the people with mentally sick, mentally ill. She wants to maintain her own space, her own community, not living in the kingdom of well, not living with the people who are healthy or so-called normal people. Rather, she wants to have her own community, her own world. And if it doesn't work, she has multiple ways of managing her life. It can be committing suicide through multiple means. It can be becoming a nun or joining the inmates in the prison or doing something else. So there are ways through which she is able to manage her life. So in this way, she is challenging the idea of normalcy. So to conclude, this novel, The Bell Jar, is a powerful literary depiction of depression. It talks about that the depression of each human being, each person is different, and there cannot be one monolithic universal pattern to describe everyone's experiences of despair and depression. Further, everyone has their own way of coping with their depression and mental illness. There cannot be one set pattern, universal pattern, homogenized pattern. And the narrative is further emphasizing the need for empathy and better mental health care. It further emphasizes that there should be gender equity between the people who are suffering, whether they are male or female. Moreover, this novel is also saying that if there is like a medical case study, it can provide a kind of homogenized narrative. But this is a literary narrative and providing individual case, individual study, which is very, very specific to the individual characters. In this way, this narrative, this novel remains relevant in the discussion of mental health and concerns of identity. I end over here for this lecture. Thank you.